Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this session on the Commerce Connection, collaborating with your Chamber of Commerce to reach local employers. I am Edith Juguna, and I'm the director of the Illinois 60 by 25 network. I'm really looking forward to this session because employer engagement is a question we get often, and we're in very good hands to talk about this topic. Jancy Lafollete is the Membership Services and Compact Manager for McLean County Chamber of Commerce and McLean County Compact. And Jessica Linder Gallo is the President and CEO of the Aurora Regional Chamber of Commerce in Aurora. And these two organizations also serve as the backbone organizations for McLean County and the Aurora region because they're both 60 by 25 leadership communities, and they set a very good example of what chambers across the state can do. So Jancy, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Edith. Jessica and I are excited to join you guys today virtually in our new Zoom world that we're all in today. And so during this session today, we are going to look at how working with your local Chamber of Commerce can support your community and really how it can help in advancing the 60 by 25 goals. We're going to do an overview of the role of our chambers and how what we're doing in our communities. We're going to highlight some current partnerships, and we're going to discuss some effective strategies to engage with employers as we move through the day. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and she's going to do a few housekeeping things just to make sure, if we're not familiar with Zoom, how we're going to be utilizing today. So Jessica?
Yeah, definitely. So we really want to engage with you guys while we're on this session. So please be interactive with us. Neither Jancy or I are super formal people, so you're not going to offend us. We want to hear from you. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, I just want to point out some buttons on that toolbar at the bottom. So use your reaction buttons. If you really love something, there's a heart in there, there's a thumbs up, there's a clap. Maybe you don't like it, there's a dislike, but those are all in there as well. Raise your hand, feel free to jump in. We'll pause a couple times in this session for questions, but if something's really on your mind, Jancy and I's buttons are in different places, so I probably need to update my Zoom. I don't know, but hers is in reactions. Mine, I had to go to participants, so you may need to explore a little bit there, but we definitely want to hear your voice today. We know our voices sound really great, but talking into a void for an hour is not our goal, so we want to hear from you too. With that, we'll start with some introductions today. So as Edith said, my name is Jessica Linder Gallo. I'm the president and CEO of the Aurora Regional Chamber of Commerce. We are about 40 miles west of Chicago in the far west suburbs. Our tried and true Aurorans would not like that I just said that. They would say the suburbs have come to us, but nonetheless, we find ourselves in suburbia here. So I stepped in this role edging towards a year and a half ago now, and I've been in chamber world for close to 5 years. So we'll talk more about our communities and chambers in a minute. So I'll stop there.
Wonderful. And I am Jancy Lafollete. I work with the McLean County Chamber of Commerce and the McLean County Community Compact. We are located in Bloomington and Normal, Illinois. So if you go south on 55 from Chicago, we're about midway down, just north of Springfield. And we're the home of Illinois State University, Illinois Wesleyan University, Heartland Community College, and so just to name a few. And I have actually been with the chamber almost as long as Jessica's been in her role. So that's actually how we met, amazingly enough. So almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years here shortly. Prior to that, I actually worked with the Corporation for National and Community Service and worked with AmeriCorps, Vista, and Senior Corps programming prior to this engagement. So that is who I am. And you have our contact information there. If you guys ever want to reach out, we are more than happy to discuss any of the content of today as we move forward.
So here in the beginning, we would love to hear from you. Since we have a pretty big group, we're going to ask you to just jump in the chat box. So please go ahead and throw your name, title, organization, all that kind of basic contact. We'd love to know kind of who's in the room with us and for you to have an idea. And at that same time, while you're doing that, we are going to ask you to open up kind of a web browser, if you will, on your phone, on your computer, whatever is easiest, and go to slido.com. It's going to ask you for a password, and if you can throw in there the word chamber, you're going to see a couple of questions popping up for you. So I'm going to actually move a screen over for us. So the first question, we just want to hear from you guys. Have you worked with your local chamber before? So it's going to ask you kind of a number of options. Maybe you do it all the time. Maybe you don't know if you have a chamber. Any of those are okay, but we'd love to hear what your level of engagement is. And then Oh, we've got some all the times right off the bat. I love that. So we'll see those kind of coming through here.
And it looks like we have a great group of folks on today. Anyone from the United Way of Central Illinois, the Illinois Science and Tech Institute, Elgin Community College. And so I think we have some great folks on here. So again, we'd love to hear from you as we move through the session as Jessica was talking. I think we'll give this just a couple more seconds for the Slido piece, but make sure that you also tell us who you are and where you're from, and so we can connect with you as well.
So really good. It sounds like most everybody, actually everybody is at least familiar with the chamber, a few who haven't engaged before, but lots who have. So that's going to be really good here as we go through. Second question, if you are in there, it'll ask you then, what words do you associate with your Chamber of Commerce? Love to hear just kind of what comes to mind when you think of a chamber. So, and as you're putting those in, I want to kind of level set this too. Hopefully, so we're going to address here in the beginning, what is a Chamber of Commerce? And just so you know, we are not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. You might know perfectly well, and that's great, but we want to get a baseline so we're all kind of on the same page here in the beginning. And in all fairness, Jancy, I don't know about you, but when I started in chamber world, all I really knew about chambers were that there was a really cool window cling on a lot of businesses in the town I grew up in. So if you know more than that, wonderful. If not, it's okay. I've been there.
Yes, very much so. I think Jessica and I kind of talked about this. A lot of folks have a preconceived notion about what a chamber is. And so when we were building out this presentation, we really wanted to kind of lay the framework for today is, what words are you associating with the chamber? What is the one thing that when you think about chambers of commerce, and why are we talking about this today at the 60 by 25 conference? You know, what words are associated with that? And so I think that's just a great place to start. But I do agree with Jessica. I think as we kind of come into the chamber world, a lot of us, you know, you have that preconceived notion of what you were stepping into when we got going. So it looks like we have some great feedback, 14 responses from our folks. So that's fantastic. Business definitely rising to the top.
Yes, which is an excellent and accurate answer. We deal with businesses all the time. I see some collaborative, networking, certainly things that we are known for. I love seeing words like partnership, resource provider. Whoever put those in there, you're making my heart happy right now. So thank you for that. So lots of good words in there.
I also see inaccessible, which is an interesting word to talk about. And so hopefully we can break that down a little bit today and see how your chamber can be maybe a little bit more accessible to folks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and hit that definition then. So what is a Chamber of Commerce? So Chamber of Commerce, this is a little bit of a trick question because there is no single definition. Our definition, we've pulled from parts from the U.S. Chamber, the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, and other experts. But we're saying that a Chamber of Commerce is a voluntary partnership of businesses and professionals to seek to further collective interests while working together. And really, we're trying to build a healthy economy, advocate for economic prosperity, and improve the quality of life in the community, region, state, and our nation. So I think one of the most important parts of this definition that it really is a voluntary partnership, and some of you said partner in there. So we have members that make up our chamber, and those volunteers are such a core part of what we do and really moving the mission of the chamber forward. And certainly our community partners are part of that, which is why we're here to talk. So we'll dig into that a bit.
So now we're going to look at what a chamber is not. So maybe some of the misconceptions. One thing I will note is that all chambers are different. So just like every community that we're serving, every chamber is a little different. They have different focus areas. They have different things that they focus on. Every community has different needs. Every community has different employers. And so every chamber is going to be a little different. However, these are kind of some general pieces that Jessica and I wanted to touch upon. So A chamber is not a department of the city, county, or state government. That is something we get a lot with the McLean County Chamber of Commerce. Everyone's like, oh, you guys are a county employee. And I'm like, nope, we are not. A political body, civic club, or professional society. Actually, we are a bipartisan organization. And so we have a lot of volunteers who serve with us. But that is not really where we fit either. Service, welfare, or charitable institution. Nope, not exactly. A public relations agency, while sometimes it might feel like that, that is not our main goal. And an agency of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce or the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And again, those are professional associations in which we are a part of, but not an agency of. And so chambers are a private, not-for-profit corporation. And so typically a 501c3, funding typically comes from a diverse spectrum of funding opportunities, from private donations. Some chambers get some municipality funding, some just do private funding, but for the most part, it is a private, not-for-profit. A 501c6 basically means we still pay the taxes that a 501c3 does not. So that's kind of the big difference there. There's other differences, but that's a big one if you're unfamiliar with that. So a few misconceptions as chambers across the state really look a little differently, but for the most part, we are a business organization that really focuses on supporting and serving the member. So we are a membership organization for our local businesses. So Jessica, anything to add to that?
Nope, I think you nailed it.
Any questions? So I am manning the chat today. So I know Jessica is sharing the screen. She's driving, and so I am manning the chat. But if you guys do have any questions, I did see here from Daryl, they had to close their small rural chamber as a board member. It was very sad. So yes, that is something that we have seen in some communities, is that those chambers have had to close in different communities. So if you guys do have questions as we go throughout the day, please feel free to raise your hand. I will try to monitor that as well. But also you can drop those chat questions in there is probably the best, because I will be monitoring that. So any questions about what a chamber is in general? Oh, a question did come in from Mary. Do the areas of focus / support for chambers vary by community? And the answer is yes. They most certainly do. For Jessica and I, we do have clearly a focus on workforce as we're sitting here talking to you guys today. But some of them do vary on what the focuses are for those communities. If they are networking specific or heavy, if they're education. But for the most part, they do have some varying degrees. Anything to add to that, Jessica?
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see some different, especially when it comes to things like advocacy and community development. You'll see kind of a varying degree of how engaged and what that looks like by community. So I think that's a great question to ask. And I think just getting to know your chamber, you'll start to figure out kind of what their priorities are. We'll talk a little about our individual chambers in a second. And I also, there was a second chat there, Jancy, that I wanted to jump on too, that Mitch asked how a chamber is funded. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions. So chambers really do, as a 501c6, we operate more like a business than anything. So we're not a charitable entity, so we could have donors, but it looks a lot different because those aren't tax deductible donations. So someone would have to really love us to just write us a donation check in that way. So that part looks a little different. Some chambers do receive funding from governments for contracts if they have like work that they're doing, but by and large, chambers are majority funded by membership dues. So our businesses pay a fee to be part of our association and to receive the support and services we provide. So that is, for most chambers, a majority of their funding.
Yeah, and the business models do vary from member or from chamber to chamber. So it might be where it's a 60-20 split, or different splits as to where those funds come from. But yes, membership dues kind of do make up a big piece of how we're funded. Any other questions before we turn it over to Jessica to really talk about the Aurora Chamber? All right, Jessica, the floor is yours.
Perfect. And I apologize. I hope you're not hearing that dog bark, but I think you are. This is her third event today, and she's really tired of being quiet. So Thank you for rolling with me. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the Aurora Chamber. Because this is a session about how to partner with chambers, we wanted to include that as well as a little information. Edith had asked us to share a little bit about our leadership communities as well. So I'll be quick here. If you have questions, like Jancy said, throw them in the chat. But the Aurora Regional Chamber of Commerce, we serve a Quad County area, and it's a loose boundary and the area there around it. So we always say we serve the greater Aurora region. So for us, that includes the core of Kane, Kendall, DuPage, and Will counties in the western suburbs. We do have members that are also in Cook County or in some of the other surrounding counties. So there's no hard line there, but we represent about 600 businesses, and our organization is just over 110 years old. So a long history in advocating for business and really trying to be part of creating the economic prosperity in our region. Jancy will say this as well for the McLean County Chamber. We are a 5-star accredited chamber with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And what that means is that we've achieved a level of professional functioning, of financial health, of advocacy that really is kind of what the U.S. Chamber is looking to say, like, this is what chambers, how they should be operating. There are 2% of chambers in the United States that have achieved this designation. So it's not a very big club of us. We are lucky to be in that club together with the McLean County Chamber and really 4 other chambers in the state of Illinois. We also, in Aurora, we're very proud to have been named the 2020 Chamber of the Year for Illinois. So that was a very cool award to have earned after a very crazy year. So a little bit about us there. Our mission, our vision really is to be the catalyst for business success in our region. So we're going to talk a little bit later. There's kind of some core promises we say that goes with that, being a catalyst for business growth, a convener for business leaders and community influencers, and a champion for business values and a champion for our communities. We're going to talk more about that later and kind of what does a modern chamber look like and how does that let you partner with them. But this is just a little bit about the Aurora Chamber and kind of the core values and how we strive to work in our communities. I always say when I put up our values, I get nervous for a moment because when you say you lead with passion and energy, I'm always thinking, oh God, please don't let someone be thinking, well, she seems really bored right now. So hopefully you get that energy from me. We really do love what we do and are excited to get to do it every day. So our leadership community. So in terms of the 60 by 25 initiative, just wanted to show you a little bit of who our leadership team is in that effort. So we have grown a bit over the years. So Aurora started as part of the 60 by 25 initiative really from the beginning. And you'll hear in a minute how we've been re-strategizing that because we believe there are some key players that are maybe missing from our table right now that we want to bring in. But we started with just 2 school districts and we've grown to kind of the main 4 serving Aurora as part of this. Aurora is a little bit odd in that we are a very big region that sits on a lot of boundaries. So Aurora sits in 4 school districts. There's a couple more serving kind of unincorporated Aurora and the outer edges. We sit in 4 counties, 2 community college districts, many legislative districts. So there's certainly some other regions like ours. The Quad Cities comes to mind being kind of on that bi-state line. But we have kind of a unique challenge in that we are working to drive forward this big goal of workforce development and really kind of trying to strive for economic prosperity in our region, in a region that's made up of a lot of different groups. So being a master of partnerships has to be really kind of core to our being and really to all of us working in this area to succeed. So I mentioned a minute ago that we are re-strategizing a little bit. So we were one of the original leadership communities for the 60 by 25 initiative. And in the last 2 years, almost every single one of the organizations you see here has had a leadership change. Not all of them. We have a couple who have stayed steady, but almost all of them have seen a new superintendent, myself, a new CEO. In the last 3 years, we saw a new mayor. So just a lot of change in the leadership of our organizations. And it presented kind of an opportunity for us to so many people learning about this initiative coming in. So it also gave us an opportunity to ask questions and really start to look at what is the role of Pathways to Prosperity, which is what we call our 60 by 25 initiative for reference. So what's the role of Pathways to Prosperity? How can it be collaborating with other groups? We've had kind of new organizations emerge since we started in this work. I think 6 years ago now. So, we have an education collaborative now. How do they come into what we're doing? Who's missing from the table? We have an industrial association that we said, hey, wait a minute, we really want them to be part of this conversation. So we've kind of looked at who needs to be with us and how do we put a greater focus on equity in all of the work that we're doing. So with COVID, those conversations were already happening before that. And with COVID, we certainly had to put a few things on pause, as I'm sure you all did, and look at things a little differently. But I would imagine in the next year for us, our leadership team may look a little different, and we'll get to continue these conversations. And really, we know where we're going. We know what that goal is, to have a workforce that is educated and highly skilled and ready to work and thrive and feed and earn for their families. That's really what we're striving for. But how we get there is really what we are trying to have conversations around and get really clear about in our community. So I imagine for many of you, we were already re-strategizing, but with COVID, it's brought about this almost natural pause point for many organizations and many initiatives. So I imagine that seeing the word re-strategize is not looking strange to you. I imagine many of you are having similar conversations in this time as things look different. Couple of other updates in our community. So we also knew, looking at all of this, that we needed help. So I already had some connections with the Stevenson Center for Community and Economic Development at Illinois State University. And I believe we've got a couple Illinois State people on this session. So hello to you. But that was a program that I was an alumni of. We had past fellows with our Economic Development Office through that program in Aurora. I had previously worked with an economic development person that was an alum of that program. So we had the connections, and we knew that we could get a really great student through that program. So we went through and applied, and we now have a fellow through the Stevenson Center who is serving as our workforce development specialist and helping to really help us convene and do the re-strategizing we're talking about. He's been such an asset to us, and hopefully we'll be able to hang on to him beyond just a fellowship, but it's been such an asset for us to have a person who's dedicating their thoughts to really the work we're doing here. We've also done a few programs in the last year. So our business and education roundtables, we really look to bring together the business and education leaders and discuss kind of the impacts of the pandemic. There were some powerful conversations that happened in those. We're beginning to host roundtables on apprenticeships and are working with our community college to get really the right certifications in place and bring partners in to start to align apprenticeships with our K through 12 pathways programs that have already been in existence. So starting to kind of extend that arm of pathways. And then conversations around equity. I mentioned this earlier, and it's really, we're trying to weave it into everything we do. Our school districts and our community colleges have made investments in professionals that are driving the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that has been really powerful in bringing that into these conversations. We hosted our first DEI professional roundtable a couple of weeks ago, where we brought folks that are really kind of professionals in this space together to talk about opportunities and challenges in our region, which was such an interesting session to get to be part of. And then really we are looking at, we are already having conversations and trying to look at how we can think about economic development as equitable economic development and what that looks like. It's really workforce development. It doesn't happen in a silo, right? It's as intimately tied to economic development as it is education. And so we're trying to look at, is a job, or are we really looking to bring living wage jobs to our community? Is an investment, or does it matter what we're bringing investment in? And so really trying to be thoughtful about what that looks like. All right, that's a lot of my voice. Jancy, I'm gonna tap you here.
All right, well, we will move forward. So McLean County Chamber of Commerce and Compact. So we are a little different in McLean County. So the McLean County Chamber of Commerce serves the greater Bloomington Normal area, and our mission is to support and serve our members. The Chamber The Chamber promotes commerce, advocates the pro-business perspective, collaborates to lead change, and engage in actions for results that strengthen the prosperity of the business community. So we really drive the pace, so that PACE, drive the pace for the region as it relates to that. Very similar to Jessica, kind of an overview of us. We represent about 1,000 businesses in the McLean County region. We are a 5-star accreditation, which you guys already know what that is from Jessica's presentation. However, how we differ is that we actually do have a subsidiary. So the Chamber of Commerce has a 501c3 subsidiary, which is the McLean County Community Compact. And so the compact is the leadership group that drives kind of what we do under the 60 by 25 network. It drives our workforce development, engagement, and activities that we have there. Jessica, if you go to the next slide, the mission of Compact is really through our integrated network of employers, educators, and community resources is to grow a robust, diverse, and work-ready talent pipeline. Our goals are to increase employer and educator collaborations, improve college and career readiness, and provide equitable access to success while increasing talent attraction and retention. We do this through research and data and assessments, trying to reduce silos and inefficiencies where efforts might be duplicative or there might be not connections being made. Our goal is really to connect, coordinate, collaborate, grow, and maintain those integrated networks. So we really focus on those intentional collaborations. The compact was formed actually prior to the work of the 60 by 25. It has actually been around since the late 80s and was formed actually under a local youth problem from a study group. And so this is where kind of communities took action and they formed the compact. The main focus of that time was to strengthen the transition from young people to school to the working world. They worked with the U of I Extension closely for a long period of time. And then in 2013, they moved under Heartland Community College. And then in 2015, so Compact has this little varied past. Compact actually was rolled, or there was discussions to bring it to the chamber. So in 2015, Be an Advantage, which is an economic development strategy for Bloomington Normal, that was released. And it unveiled the strategic framework to guide McLean County to a prosperous and sustainable economic future. So this was an effort. Be an Advantage was an effort of the Chamber, our Economic Development Council, our Convention and Visitors Bureau, our colleges, our universities, our public transit, our airport, all of those things. And they really looked at all things Bloomington Normal and McLean County. But a critical component of the Be an Advantage was to develop a standing workforce development committee. This standing workforce development committee would really look at the needs for workforce in McLean County. And it was to be championed by the Chamber of Commerce to fulfill the goals of that program. The efforts of the Workforce Development Committee and the mission of the McLean County Compact made for a natural partnership. So we had folks on the Workforce Development Committee who also had served on the Compact board and really saw those aligning. At this time, kind of when we were trying to align those is when we got involved with the 60 by 25 network as well. And so the Chamber and Compact joined in March of 2018, and we became an official subsidiary, of the Chamber of Commerce, and really rebranded the organization as just the Compact versus the full McLean County Community Compact. And really, we focus on those intentional collaborations. Today, we are a dynamic organization dedicated to community education and business leaders, and really looking at how we share the responsibility to maintain and enhance our workforce development here in McLean County. So that's kind of who Compact is. The next slide that you'll see kind of shows our leadership team. So our leadership team for 60 by 25 is led by our board of directors. So we have our own board of directors. The Chamber has their own board of directors, and then Compact has their own board of directors. And so we have representation from not only businesses, but also our public schools here. So Bloomington Public Schools District 87, McLean County Unit 5. We also have our Bloomington Area Career Center, and then we have the United Way, our laborers, the Division for the Midwest Regional Laborers are part of us. We have representation from Illinois State University and Heartland Community College, as well as our Regional Office of Education. And then we have our private industries such as Carl Broman Medical Center and our Core 3 Property Management, Country Insurance. So there's just a blend of folks who are really trying to drive the conversation forward. As Jessica said, our leadership team will ebb this year as well, as we've had we'll have some transitions with folks, but most of these, including Dr. Lynn Hafley and Kathy Nicholson-Tosh, were our lead components getting us involved in the 60 by 25 network and their work that they had and the vision they had for the work that was going on here in McLean County in the Bloomington-Normal region. Part of our efforts that we do, we also look at community investors. And so the next slide will show our community investors as it relates to our private businesses who are investing in the work that we are doing here, are kept abreast to what's happening, and people that we reach out for partnerships. All of these here are either private foundations or private businesses and our municipalities, so the city of Bloomington and the town of Normal, who we look to for really, we've talked to them, they support the mission and some of the work that we've been doing. And so we like to recognize that this has been a community effort. So the things that we are looking at are really some of the investors that we have backing the work that we're doing for us. The next slide kind of talks about what we're working on. So a few of the things that we're working on here are our Becoming BN program. Becoming a BN is part of that retention and attraction piece that we have focused on. It's really, originally it was established to be a summer program for summer interns. That expanded into early career folks, that expanded into grad students. So we really focus on high school and post-secondary focusing as it relates to getting folks involved in the community. And so we have expanded that program in 2019. We actually piloted the program. It was a 10-week program. We did events once a week, and we tried to engage students or young professionals in that group. In 2020, as we all did, we pivoted and it became an online event. And then for 2021, we're actually looking to do this more regularly throughout the year. So that's a program that we're really excited about moving forward with. In addition, we have hosted Education to Employer series of events. So in 2019, we hosted, 2 Education to Employer summits. So these were actually not really even half day. They were like 3-hour events towards the end of the day. One focused on secondary, one focused on post-secondary, and the Education to Employer summits really focused on raising awareness of what was going on in education and what employers were seeking. And so this really was to have a platform for our educators and our employers to talk the same language. We had for our Education to Employer summit that focused on post-secondary education. We actually had all the university presidents come and do a fireside chat to do our kickoff. Then we had breakout sessions as it related to upskilling and different programs that are available to students and employers alike. For our post-secondary, we talked about some of the innovation approaches that are happening with our Bloomington Area Career Center and our other school districts in our region. And so we had a great response from this. We had a lot of interconnectivity. One of my best stories from our Education to Employer Summit was our Bridgestone plant here in Bloomington Normal stood up in a session and said, if you want a tour, I am the person to talk to. And so we had so many educators really were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea how to get behind the wall of Bridgestone, and now we have an in. And so that was, those are the kind of outcomes that we were looking for to really see how we can connect those educators and employers. It also helps with just having the conversation of what are the needs, right? What are the needs of employers? What are you looking for? And so this really helped with that. In 2020, again, we pivoted and Rebecca Forsyth, who is actually actually on the call today, she's our AmeriCorps Vista, one of our AmeriCorps Vista members, led a series of roundtables this fall. And so the roundtables really focused, again, continuing that conversation around what are the needs. We did Zoom meetings, and then we broke them out into small breakout rooms and had them talk about what are their needs and what are the needs for the community and where should we be spending our energy and our efforts, and really connecting and collaborating and getting folks to meet each other. In a virtual society right now, it's a little harder to rub elbows with the right people. And so again, giving them that platform to be able to do that. So that's a series that we are looking to continue and move forward with in 2021. And we actually have a planning meeting tomorrow for that. So we have lots going on there. In addition, very similar to what Jessica said with her fellow, I tapped into the groups that I knew, right? So she had familiarity with the Stevenson Center. I had familiarity with AmeriCorps Vista. And so we actually wrote a grant to CNCS for a Vista project to help us with sustainability, that equitable access to success, making sure that our students and educators across the board, everyone has that equitable access to success, and bringing that lens to that. And so Rebecca Forsyth and Stacy Belay are our two Vista members. They served for 12 months with us under the Vista project in a full-time capacity. And they're really focusing on community outreach and resource development for us as we move forward. So that is one of the pieces that we have looked into to expand our sustainability and our reach as we look at Compact. Compact is a volunteer-driven organization. They have a part-time staff person, myself, and so to be able to drive that forward, we needed that additional assistance to do that. In addition to these projects, we also partner with our Economic Development Council. We actually just did a resource mapping project with them earlier this week, where we sat down with EDC, our United Way, Heartland Community College, and really looked at where we are on kind of the spectrum of bringing folks into the system and connecting them throughout. And so that was a really interesting resource mapping project. We're looking to continue to do some mapping of our community to see where things and people are hitting, where our workforce needs are at, and who's doing what in that space to provide those community resource. In addition, we always look at these things and these projects through that equitable access to success lens. So that is something that we continually look at as we look at what are we doing, how are we providing access to students and educators and employers, and making sure that we have that equitable access across the board. One of the projects that we did this year in July of 2020 is we actually did launch the McLeancocompact.org website. It is a community resource that we have that really serves as a place for folks to go to. We focus on students and educators and employers and what resources are out there for them. We have an events calendar. We have different opportunities that are happening within the community as it revolves to our space. So again, trying to serve as that community resource, being that convener and that connector of information has really been some of the pieces that we have worked with. Under the 60 by 25 network, we also, which I don't know how I failed to put this on here, we had a project to really focus on, oh my gosh, Edith, I just lost it. The high school endorsement project. Whoo, I will get there. Our high school endorsement project and being a convener to bring folks together to really map out college credits and dual credits and stackable credits and the coursework that goes along with those programs. And so we were lucky enough to get one of the initial awards for that, and really brought some of our key players, Olympia High School, Bloomington High School, or Bloomington District 87, and then McLean County Unit 5, and then our Bloomington Area Career Center, Heartland Community College, all came to the table to really look at kind of mapping out those resources and continuing that conversation as we look at the high school endorsement process and some of the challenges of that and some of the benefits of that, and really continuing that conversation down the road. 2020, again, kind of put us back on our heels a little bit, as it did with all things. As a lot of our schools were just trying to figure out how to move forward. But that is another project that we have taken on and have really experienced. So for 2020, we've done a lot of reimagining. COVID-19 really did affect not only our community, but our world and kind of how we do things. In June, we welcomed our Vista members. In July, we launched our website. We hosted our Becoming the End program in a virtual way. We did our education to employer roundtables this fall. And so we are looking forward to 2021 and really continuing to look at how we can bring students and educators and employers together and make sure that the needs of our community are being met. And so that is one of the things that we focus on here. So I'm sorry, I think I'm over my time, Jessica, but any questions for me? Thank you. Edith threw in the chat the College and Career Pathway endorsement, what that program was or is. And so I appreciate that. Thanks, Edith.
I don't think we have any questions right now, but really good information, Jancy. I love hearing what, it's always great for me to hear too what other chambers are doing. So if you guys have questions for Jancy, for sake of time, I'm going to keep moving and we can always jump back. So drop them in there. So as we talk about really how you can engage with employers, we think that partnering with your chamber can be a really impactful part of that strategy for you. And that can be a great way to expand your reach. So like Jancy said, there's, I love that example you gave of you're at an education event with educators and employers, and there's so much connecting that can happen just by being in the room together, and chambers are a great place to do that. So I want to bring up for you guys just a quick little video here.
It's about him. It's about her. It's about them and every other person that is chasing their dream across our region. We do it for him and her and every family that calls this place home. We do it to help businesses prosper and communities thrive. It takes passion. It takes tenacity. It takes teamwork. It requires perseverance, leadership, and innovation. Who are we? We are the catalyst for business growth. We are the convener for leaders and influencers. We are the champion for stronger communities. We are your Chamber of Commerce. Because every dream should have a chance to come true.
Awesome. So I show you guys that chambers of commerce have really been around for centuries. And the earliest dates back as far as 1599 in Marseille, France. Even in the US, the oldest chamber is said to be the New York Chamber in 1768. Charleston was the first city chamber in 1773. We are old, you guys. We are not young organizations. And why is this important? It's important because chambers have pivoted and refocused many times before. And the root of our really existence, our purpose has remained in advocating for businesses and helping grow the economy. And that continues to remain steady. So in the last decade, chambers have been taking kind of another shifting period. So there are a few initiatives I want to make you aware of to kind of illustrate this. So the Horizon Initiative was an initiative that was put together by the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. And it was really where they researched and studied economies and chambers across the US. Initially, they set out to say, what will a chamber look like in 2025? And quickly they realized that that wasn't possible. They couldn't tell you what the Philadelphia chamber with 100 staff people and a small Midwestern community chamber or a small beach town chamber with 2 staff people or any of us in between, they couldn't tell us what we would all look like because we're probably all going to look different. But they ended up determining really 8 influences that would impact chambers over the 10 years from 2015 to 2025. And if you ask me, the biggest weakness of this report is really that the influences have come into play far quicker than we thought. We 5 years into this report, and the influences are all here far quicker than kind of initially projected. But it's been this great pivot in the chamber world to really help us all think about what our role in communities can be. And the most important result of this work has been driving industry conversations, much like the ones that you all have been having in education. And chambers are more and more often viewing themselves as what we call a 3C chamber, which that video introduced, rather than kind of the 3P chamber of the 90s and the early 2000s that was incredibly common. So what I mean by that, 3Ps, those are the parties, parades, and pageants chambers that many of us used to be. In some communities, I will say a time out there, in some communities, those are still really important. So in some communities, the community I came from in Western Illinois, we were doing the 3C work, and we still did a community festival. So not to say that those are never important in communities of yours around the state, but it's really been a driver in the conversation for chambers to be looking at how we can be a catalyst for business success and really focus on giving businesses the tools that they need to succeed. And that includes helping build the workforce and helping build those pipelines to have employees, which is very much part of the conversation here for 60 by 25. That part of the conversation has been how we can be a champion for stronger communities. So we advocate for solutions to really complex problems and for legislation to support all of the work that's going on. And that last part is being a convener for leaders and influencers. I love this photo that we have from Compact, from Jancy's chamber. Chambers are excellent neutral conveners. And the photo here is of an Education to Employer Summit, as she was talking about, which is just an excellent example of how chambers can play a role in helping bring everyone to the table, especially in situations where there are many different players and complex solutions are needed. Chambers often already have relationships with educators, policymakers, community organizations, and employers. And so if we can help build those bridges that may take longer for others to build, because first they'd have to find the relationship, make the connection. So using your chamber can be a really great way to be at the table, bring people to the table, and to make the connections that you're probably looking for, whether that be an employer or another organization. I'm going to turn it to Jancy here. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of kind of why you might want to partner with a chamber and where we could play into that. We've got some strategies and some kind of tips for approaching your chamber as well.
Absolutely. So just as successful strategies to engage employers as we wrap up our presentation today, I do want to say, first of all, results may vary. So this is kind of our disclaimer Jessica and I kind of talked about, where as we started off the conversation today of not all chambers are the same. And so results may vary. Every community has a unique community need, a key industry, and finding what works for your community and your employers will vary. So what works for Jessica does not work in Bloomington, Normal, and Aurora, 2 totally different communities. However, there's some great ideas of what is going on. So just keeping that in mind to find what works for you guys is definitely a strategy to success of making sure that you look at your community wholly in that approach. In addition, I have found that you need to find your champion. A champion is someone who buys into the need for the 60 by 25 network, who gets that 60% of our population should have a post-secondary credential by 2025, and what that means to employers, what that means to the community. And so finding that champion from the business community is key to that success. Compact and our chamber here actually found that in Advocate Broman, now Carl Broman Health Center. We had a champion who was our Vice President of Human Services, our predecessor to our current chair, and he was really the champion and was very boisterous within the community about those roles that the chamber can take on and that Compact can take on. So finding that person is gonna, and again, it's gonna be based on who is in your community. In addition, I would say with working with employers is to have a specific ask. Giving employers tangible ways to engage while outlining how their investment will impact not only the community, but also their business is going to be key when you work with business owners and businesses in general. Coming from the nonprofit world into the chamber world and dealing with nonprofits and dealing with businesses, we speak different languages, and so being able to bridge those gaps has been an interesting study for myself, but also being able to have that specific ask as you go. We want you involved. Okay, what does that mean? Is there some tangible way? We want you to come in and talk to students. We'd love to give a virtual tour. We'd love to do a video of you or come into a video classroom. We'd love to just sit down with you and discuss how we can, what can we do better? What are your needs? And so that leads us into my next point is just communication is a two-way street. While you as a lot of our educators have needs, you also, so do our employers. And so just making sure that you listen to the employer's needs, listen to kind of what's going on in the community. We just had a conversation not too long ago about how because of COVID, our working world is changing. Our workforce and what they want to do is changing. And so remote work is now part of the conversation. And what does that look like? And so those pieces, especially with our largest employers here, State Farm and Country Insurance, those are some conversations that we're having as we look forward. And what does that mean to students who are coming in? Utilize your networks and events. So one of the things that Jessica talked about is, going to events and rubbing elbows with people. One of the things that we found that Compact actually did right off the bat was with Heartland Community College. We established an essential workplace skills training program. And so that was a program that came out of a needs survey that we did that the chamber did with employers, like what are your needs as it relates to workforce? And basically 90% of our employers said, you can call them soft skills, you can call them transferable skills, but basically that those tangible skills, that's what they're finding that they were lacking. And so we worked with Heartland to develop an essential workplace skills training program that they are now taking and running with, and including in some of their training programs that they're working with dual credits with our high school students. So those steps and that started from, hey, we're interested in this, and what it ballooned into today and will continue to grow is very interesting. So utilizing those networks, there's events that are already happening. That's one of the things we do here is how can we lift up some of the events that are already happening and not reinventing the wheel on that. I do know there's a question that came in. So what tips do you have for folks to engage chambers who are not currently engaged in the 60 by 25 network? Jessica, do you want to take that one? I can take it. I have a thought, but I'll let you chime in if you have one.
Yeah, I'll kick that off. I think that's such a good question because there are many chambers that are not. I think we are probably a couple of the oddities who are. And I think that chambers can bring so much to this work. Naturally, obviously I would think that, but I really do. And so like I saw one message that came through to me earlier referencing another chamber who does amazing work in this workforce space already. So, if you have a chamber in your area, maybe they're not familiar with 60 by 25 yet. They might already be doing great work here that could complement what you're doing. And maybe they're not doing that work yet. So you could bring them a little bit of information. I would also say if your chamber is curious about it, send them to me, send them to Jancy. We would love to talk to them. I just offered you up, Jancy, but I see you nodding. So we'd be happy to talk to them and tell them, what this has looked like for us and help them kind of figure out what might be a fit for them too. But I think definitely just if your chamber isn't already part of 60 by 25, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to be an asset in this.
And I think doing the reach out to them, if you have a chamber, if your community has a chamber, if there's a regional community or a regional chamber, or if there's a group of business professionals there might not be a chamber, there might be a group of business professionals depending on your community. Every community is different. That it might just be, hey, let's sit down and have coffee. We can have coffee now. Let's sit down and have coffee and have a conversation about what's going on in this space and how can we move forward. I know with our chamber, we try to keep a pulse on where things are going and what's happening and how we can lift each other up within our community. Not always the easiest because people are busy and people are going 500 different directions, but we're trying to be and really trying to intentionally build those connections and those collaborations. And I think if you reach out to your local chamber, you reach out to your local business professional group, I think that's definitely going to be the first step to start that conversation. And it's not a quick response. I think that's something that Jessica and I can both say is this is not something that we get results overnight. This is definitely a slow build. You are in a long marathon, not a sprint, when you build those relationships, because it is, how can we engage? What are the needs? What are the specific asks? Who can be our champion? How can we utilize the networks that are already there and the events that are already happening, and making sure that you're looking at those pieces. So that's my 2 cents on that. But any other questions? Great question, Edith. Thank you. Any other questions from folks who, what we're doing, what's going on with chambers? It's just like what's going on with school districts. I think it varies from school to school. It'll vary from chamber to chamber and community to community, but we are open to ask questions. And yes, I would happily serve as a resource for anyone who might be interested. And if they don't want to talk to me, they can talk to my CEO, Charlie Moore, for the chamber. Jessica is the CEO of the Aurora Chamber. Our CEO is Charlie Moore here in Bloomington Normal. But let us know how we can support you.
Yeah, and I think Jancy, we'll give folks a minute here to drop any questions in the chat box, but just kind of building on what you were saying even a moment ago, I think one thing I want to tell people too, especially if, we saw over half of you were in that category of we've occasionally talked to our chamber, right? So maybe you haven't more formally worked together, but you're aware of each other. And I think that's an incredible place to start, and really just keeping that almost constant communication. So we've done a few things in our community to help us with that connection, because I think we don't always think of our partners right away if they're not front of mind, right? Like out of sight, out of mind. So maybe that's that you need to bring together a group of folks. So we brought together a group of people who are doing workforce. They're really truly the on the ground workforce folks throughout our region once a month to sit and say, okay, what are you seeing? What's in the data? What's going on in your world? What are you working on? And naturally, a lot has come out of that. Folks were say, we'll see a problem and someone says, oh, well, we actually started working on this thing. And oh, well, we actually have data that could help you with that. And oh, we have funding over here. So I just think coming into the room can really help. And I don't want people to be intimidated by that have a specific ask. That was something Jancy and I talked a lot about, is kind of having a direction, but that doesn't have to be a project. So maybe the specific ask you have is we need information, as we need to know what employers' needs are. We need to know how many people are hiring. So don't be too intimidated by what those could look like. I think the relationship can really blossom when you give it space to.
Absolutely. Jessica, can you put our contact information back up on the screen? I think that's actually our last slide once again.
There you go.
Can ask for that. She's learned a lot about chambers, so we are happy to help however we can. You can check out Jessica's website for the Aurora Chamber is, Jessica, what is it?
It is aurorachamber.com. Nothing sly. I'll put it in the chat box though.
And for us, McLean, CO Compact .org is ours. Or if you want our chamber, that is McLeanCoChamber.org. We're real ingenious too over here. But yes.
We're not trying to hide from anybody.
Yeah. If you guys do have anything, let us know. But I think this concludes. We're right at the top of the hour. So Edith, we will turn it back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica and Jancy. I learned a lot about chambers, so appreciate that, and really appreciate your tips on how to engage employers and how to engage chambers. So thank you, and thank you to all the attendees.